what's happening with Julian Assange, you think about all of the war crimes and all of the war profiteering that has been going on in Ukraine over the past year. And by prosecuting Assange, they do not want anyone thinking that they are going to come out and have some type of a WikiLeaks dump about all of the ish that has been going on behind the scenes with President Zelensky and a whole bunch of other people. There's been a little bit of trickling coming here and there, but I think that as we go forward, hopefully someone will have a level of Assange in terms of courage to say, oh yeah, you think what was going on with the war crimes in Iraq and Afghanistan are bad? Have a look at what's been going on here in Ukraine. And they don't want that coming out because that's the fastest way to get public opinion to turn on the war. Your thoughts?
I will say that Max did a really nice job speaking at the UN Security Council when you want to talk about pointing out the nonsense in Ukraine in that audit. So I will give props to Max because that is somebody that just did exactly that. So I do appreciate. Sorry, Kevin, go ahead.
Oh no, Ann can jump in here. I've been talking a lot.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's just ironic that now Zelensky has suspended elections until there's peace. And of course, this is another reason for him not to want to have peace in Ukraine. I can imagine that people are pretty upset with him at this point. But it's just ironic because, as you all know, in Ukraine, he's shut down opposition parties. He's shut down opposition television stations. He's outlawed Russian churches. And so when people, throughout, when I would talk to some of my friends, they would all say, oh, but, we're fighting for democracy in Ukraine. And this just gives the lie to that statement.
Yeah, no, for sure. He's definitely been using this as a huge power grab over there and playing on all of our neo-libs over here to hang Ukraine flags in their windows, as if they're standing in solidarity with something. They're such useful tools to the establishment in that. And it's amazing to me that these people keep falling for a different ruse, but with the same story over and over and over again. And I feel like I'm just going to say it now. I'm against the next war. So therefore, we won't even have to have this discussion because I'm just putting it out there. I'm against it now.
Yeah, we all should be against it now. And this is just another example of how much further down the rabbit hole we can go and in terms of how much this can get out of control. I don't think people really realize, Kevin, just how precarious this situation is. And the more that these so-called walls are closing in, as they would say about Trump, no, the walls are closing in on Ukraine, and people are dying at a completely unconscionable rate that people don't want to talk about, which should be scaring the hell out of everybody. And that is why, probably as much as any reason, they attempted to do some type of a coup against Putin. And of course, who was the person who attempted to coup Putin? Well, somebody who's even more of an insane person than even he is. So, it's really not a surprise that this is where it's evolved into. But as we've seen, if journalism was allowed to be practiced, if our First Amendment rights were allowed to be practiced on a global scale, we would have known what was going on in Ukraine long before this even started. The whole infringement regarding NATO, what happened in Crimea in 2014. Everyone thinks this thing just came out of thin air. It didn't. This was a succession of things that led to now we're going to have to use military might to show you just how serious we are. So much of this could have been avoided, as far as I can see.
Well, as you know, Julian said if wars can be started with lies, peace can be started with truth. And given the state of our corporate and state media now, as revealed through the internal communications at Twitter, the conversations that they were having regularly, as well as Facebook, and now I guess it's 25 other big tech companies who were having regular conversations. But Twitter was meeting with the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security weekly, and the FBI was funneling requests from every imaginable entity, the CIA, the Pentagon, the DOJ, even municipal police forces. And the requests came along with Excel spreadsheets of accounts that these people wanted silenced or their visibility filtered on Twitter. And then, of course, Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger, Matt, I think, hired several more journalists, and they delved into what they call the censorship industrial complex. And in their publication, I think they document 50 different NGOs that are receiving government money essentially to frame the narrative that we all hear. So more than ever, we need Julian. We need WikiLeaks. We need somebody who can break through this wall of propaganda that we have in order to let us know some truth about what our government is doing in our names.
That's precisely why they're not letting him free. That's exactly what they figure. If he had been free this whole time, imagine all the other stuff they'd have to be running around and covering up. That's essentially it. He's very dangerous to them. And they're very angry. And I think ultimately what happened is he pissed off people like Hillary Clinton. And there's people that have made it very personal. It's like a personal vendetta at this point is how it feels to me. It's very personal. And it's absurd. And anybody with any knowledge about anything having to do with our Constitution and law knows that it's absurd. So it's just at this point, I just can't believe they keep continuing this. It's crazy.
Yeah, but why it was so important for people to be out and Ann, I think, we just bid farewell to Pentagon Papers whistleblower Dan Ellsberg, who was a big supporter of mine. And I know, he went to communities like Ann's in Milwaukee and all over he talked with all of these groups that before COVID, things really upended in his life when the pandemic hit because he was a 90-year-old man. But think of this person traveling all over the country, engaging in civil disobedience, really willing to put his body on the line, and also acknowledge some of these issues that I know are on the mind of everyone tuned in. Are we going to have a nuclear Armageddon because of this Ukraine conflict? Is something going to happen that is irreversible, or are we going to see a kind of nuclear meltdown in one of Ukraine's many nuclear reactors because there's just been fighting around there? We're going to see some kind of environmental devastation. We've seen some incredible acts of sabotage, Ukrainian or Russian or Ukrainian and US, NATO or CIA or whoever is responsible. Someone's blowing all of these things up and causing incredible damage and upending the lives of Ukrainians in this war. And, meanwhile, Dan would speak out about this all the time while supporting whistleblowers. And one of the things he had to say was that, we don't have a lot of chance. There's no guarantee, nothing that we do, there's a lot that we have to fight and we're up against quite a bit, but we do have a small chance. And all we have to do is take that small chance and do something with it in order to fight. And so, I really take that. I think it's important as bleak as everything seems, there are always going to be fissures. There's always going to be opportunities. And that's where all the people involved in the Assange defense work and people who are engaged in campaigns that may seem fruitless right now, we never know what they might amount to. I never would have thought that the judge was going to spare Julian Assange momentarily and say it would be oppressive for mental health reasons to extradite him back in January of 2021. That just was okay, I wasn't prepared for that. And now I have to recalibrate. And now the United States is actually having to defend their heinous prison system to the UK courts. Well, they did fine. They were able to call in some help, some State Department interference from Tony Blinken. They were able to get back on the feet that they wanted to stand on. But also I remember what happened with President Barack Obama, and he commuted the sentence of Chelsea Manning. And I never would have thought that would happen. Why would Barack Obama care? Why would he show mercy to Chelsea Manning? He didn't like what she did one bit. He didn't like that she gave all that information to WikiLeaks that Julian Assange then published, which he's now being prosecuted for publishing and engaging in that journalism that exposed the Iraq and Afghanistan wars and revealed the injustice of Guantanamo and the hellhole prison that the military keeps down in that occupied territory of Cuba. And he didn't want to give any credibility to that, but there were people who had his ear from the LGBTQ plus community who convinced him that something needed to be done. Show mercy to this person who is going through such an incredible time. She's going to die in a military prison if you don't free her. And he did it. And so I don't think they're the same. I think it's there's different sets of issues, but you never know what's going to turn. You never know what it's going to be. I mean, right now in the last couple of months, it's been really fun to watch how the detention of, I'm not saying that it's fun that Evan Gershkovich has been detained. I don't want him to be detained, but it's been amusing to watch them try to do the verbal gymnastics that are required to say that those two cases aren't the same. And it's really jammed up the State Department and this whole U.S. government machine that is supposed to make people believe that we support democracy and human rights. Well, if they call for Russia to free Evan Gershkovich, which they absolutely should, but if they call for that, then shouldn't they stop prosecuting Julian Assange? I think the answer is obviously yes. And I think they know it. And that's why when reporters have asked them about the hypocrisy, there's a clip out there of Karine Jean-Pierre just saying that, she's not going to engage in that. She's like, shoos the reporter away. And so they know exactly. That's also why the State Department decided that they were on World Press Freedom Day going to endorse the prosecution of Julian Assange because they didn't want to get sucked into this idea that they were being hypocrites. So they were just like, okay, we see Julian Assange is different from Evan Gershkovich and not a journalist, and that's what we're going to maintain. Okay, fine. If that's your story. But like up until this point, they had wanted to not engage with it at all. And they're afraid. They're afraid of people asking questions about this. And, I firmly believe that if Julian Assange is supposed to be freed, then we don't really have any right to tell Vladimir Putin that he needs to free our American journalist. There's also a journalist that I wrote about that India jailed, accusing him of espionage. Well, all three of these people are accused of collecting state secrets. And this is the future that we are creating by having governments that, prosecute foreign journalists or people who are working for international media organizations. This is the world we are creating, that the U.S. is creating through its actions. And this is what's going to happen. There will be no world press freedom. There won't be. There just won't be. There won't be this idea of world press freedom if the U.S. continues to be able to, prosecute Julian Assange and then convict him in a trial. That will go away. When we have World Press Freedom Day, there will not be world press freedom.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.